request to speak forms are also on the counter in the back, so just keep that in mind. First order of business is approval of minutes of June 4th, 2020. Any changes, corrections, or deletions?
I'll make a motion to approve the minutes, but I do have a few editing requests. So,
Yep.
you have those? Okay.
Go ahead.
I'll try and stay on the microphone while I read this. The ones I caught were, this is especially regarding comments that I made at the meeting, so that's why I honed in on them. Let's see, within 5A, on this, well, let's see, page 3, well, it says page 2 of 5 as far as the minutes go, and a couple inches down on that page, there's a line that says second by Chris, motion carried with Patrick Cheney voting no. The next line says Patrick Cheney did provide a friendly amendment to remove the parking lot. It failed for lack of a second. In proper order of how things were acted on, the line that says Patrick Cheney did provide should be before the line of second by Chris, because then it has the results of the vote, motion carried with Patrick Cheney voting no. That was afterwards. So switch those two lines, and then in the line, I would like to strike the word friendly, because it was not a friendly amendment. They are handled in a different way. Okay, and then
that's your motion?
Yeah, a little more.
You got some other ones? Okay.
Down farther on that same page, down a couple inches from the bottom, it says Patrick Cheney provided 2 friendly amendments. Again, strike the word friendly. It was a regular amendment to change the main amendment. And the last sentence, that fence repair to McKee Tennis Courts be removed and staff would purchase post-pounder. I would like that word changed to driver. It's just more descriptive of what I was talking about. The bottom line on that same page. The very bottom line says post-pounder. I'd like it to be post-driver.
Very good.
That is all I caught.
Got any more, Patrick?
That's it.
Okay.
Then it needs a second.
All right. A second to that motion for corrections and additions?
Second, Patrick.
Okay. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Motion carried. Minutes are approved. Moving on to the next agenda item is public appearances for non-agenda items. Anything appearing that's not on our agenda, feel free to speak. I don't have any requests to speak forms here, so I'm assuming that there isn't any. But just in case there is, feel free to come up here and share your concerns.
Mark, is that one that you have, is that not a speaker? That one?
Yeah, I have one, but it's for an agenda item.
Oh, okay, sorry. So, a little mixed up there.
All right, hearing none and seeing none, I'll move on to review and approval of agenda.
I would move to revise the agenda. I thought there would be more public participation for some of these items. I'd like to suggest they be in the reverse order, D, C, B, A, which is mostly in deference to residents. Maybe some will show up.
Can you repeat that?
D, C, B, A, that order, revised to that order.
Reversing the order.
Yeah.
Okay. Is there a second to that motion? Here. We would need a, did you second that?
Yes, I'll second.
Okay, all right, thank you. All those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
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 All those opposed, motion carried. And revised agenda takes us to 5D, which is now 5A, which is Harlan Hills Mode Path discussion. And before we begin, I wish if there's a David, how do you pronounce that name? No, Ray. Okay. Do you wish to share any comments? I just wanted to hear what the... Okay. His written comments are, I have lived with the path behind my house for 20 years. I'm active in helping with Prairie. So, and he's located at 3130 Harlan Circle, Fitchburg. All right, Scott, do you want to begin? Introduce the subject?
Certainly. I was approached by a resident in the Harlan Hills neighborhood, and if you look at page 32 of your packet, the area of concern is actually in, the path is in Management Area 2 and Management Area 3. So the correspondence that I did do through the letters were direct neighbors to this area. And if you can imagine, there's a mowed path that runs parallel to the Cannonball path, you know, through Management Area 2 and Management Area 3. The existing prairie to the left, there's a real comprehensive mowed path system, and that's going to remain. But there was, as I mentioned, a concerned resident, so I wanted to, you know, take that concern and act on it. So I did send a letter indicating that we've had some concerns raised to see if anyone had any comments. I did receive comments back, and what did I? And in that first letter, what I was, the proposal that I submitted to them was to permanently close the mowing walking path. So then I got responses back from that letter, which I did share with everyone. And it was, you know, there was some that didn't want it closed, and then there were others that did want it closed. So then in reviewing those comments, I sent a second letter, which is on page 30, with basically a compromise. One of the concerns was that dogs were off their leash in that area, and the resident had dogs, you know, off the leash, coming off the path and coming into their, you know, coming into their yard.
Is it possible to indicate where the mowed walking path is in terms of the colored areas here?
If you look, well, you can kind of see to the left on page 32, Dave.
Yes.
The existing prairie, you can kind of see where the mowed paths are. My cursor is on it. If you look at, oh, I don't know if you can view my you know, it's hard. I'm kind of pointing to it on my packet. But then if you go directly to the right in Management Area 2, you can see a little bit of the path. And then, yeah, it is really difficult to see it in Management Area 3, but it does continue parallel to the Cannonball path, closer to the Cannonball path than the residence, and then veers back into the Cannonball path.
Okay.
So it runs parallel there. So then, after the second letter, what I proposed was because in the Harlan Hills area, we did put some extra signage to remind users of the park that they needed to have their dogs on a leash. So what I proposed, instead of closing the path, because people did enjoy it and walking and those kinds of things, that we would just provide some additional signage at both the east end and the west end as people are coming in or entering or leaving that mowed path area, to remind them of their, you know, that they need to have their dogs on the leash. I did get some responses back from that, which I did share with you. So I guess at this point, what staff is recommending as kind of a compromise position is that we do add some additional signage at at both ends of that mowed path, you know, in Management Area 2 and then Management Area 3.
Scott, where are those entrances to the path?
Well, I wish I could do my cursor on on the board. If you look at the management area 1, the green area, right at the tip, you can kind of see where the existing path is, and then it continues in management area 2, and then, like I say, it just runs parallel to the Cannonball path. It's really hard to, you can't see it in the map that's provided there.
It's very faint, but I can kind of.
Yeah, it's just a single mode path that runs parallel to Cannonball path, you know, along management area 3 and then also in management area 2. So, you know, I guess that's what staff is proposing. I would mention that, you know, that is really kind of the current and existing use of the park space. If the Park Commission decides that they want to change that, you know, I think that needs to be a bigger discussion, you know, because the alders have actually weighed in on this item that represent this area, so they would like to weigh in if the use of the path changes.
Patrick, you had a question?
The way that I'm reading this, and I am not familiar with this area, I don't know how to get to it, but it looks to me like the blue existing prairie labeled and green management area 1, they have the street frontage there. So if I interpret this right, there's access from, what is that? What is it? Ballina Parkway into this area, and then the path goes through the Brown Management Area 2, and then through Management Area 3, and now what I'd like to know, it looks like there is no street access directly into the Brown or the Brown Area 2 or the Green Area 3, because that's all behind private property. So then,
Actually, there is, if you look at Edenberry.
I think your mic is off, Scott.
Thank you. On Edenberry, I do believe you've got 2 houses, you know, from the corner of Edenberry and Ballina. There's 2 homes, and then you see the space in between there? I believe that is a public access into the area.
Oh, okay.
And then, well, boy, certainly where Harlan Circle is in the roundabout, if you continue to the west from that roundabout, that is definitely a public access in there.
Okay.
Don't quote me on the Edenberry one.
So there may be some between those.
Yeah,
those
maybe
two houses.
maybe not now that I'm thinking about it, Patrick.
Okay,
But for sure there is one if you go west of the roundabout at Harlan Circle.
You're sure about that one?
Oh yeah, I'm
Okay.
positive about that one.
And then otherwise, at the very east end of this, the right end of the Green Area 3, the only access is the Cannonball path?
Correct.
Okay.
Correct.
Then one thing it would seem to me is that whole management area 3 is, well, not usable really if there is not a path through there or if it is totally not mowed.
There is a mode, right. There is currently a mode path there. If there wouldn't be a mode path, it wouldn't be.
Right, and it looks like a connection point between the Cannonball path through management area 3
No doubt.
well, if there is a path, let's assume, as you're proposing, there is a path. That's the connection through management area 3 from the Cannonball path, and then lengthways through that whole green area to area 2, and then to the green and the existing prairie blue.
Correct. There is a mode path that connects.
So there's a purpose to this.
Oh,
path.
no doubt. And like I say, there has been neighbors of the existing prairie who have indicated the same concern of dogs off the leash, and we did add some additional signage there, and I guess what I'm proposing is to add some additional signage in these other areas to hopefully remind folks that they need to keep their dogs on a leash.
Yeah, my personal opinion is I hate to eliminate paths in these kind of natural areas because I think it offers people a way to appreciate, nature, and I think especially young kids, they grow up to understand it's the implications later on in life. And so although signage is only as good as the people willing to abide by it, but it's certainly a way to remind people anyway that that's our city ordinance. I don't know if there's any other simple way of eliminating the problems other than notifying police department and animal control officer when these occurrences typically take place and have them deal with it from an enforcement standpoint. Any other comments for Scott? Yep, go ahead.
I'd like to.
Microphone?
Pardon?
Microphone? Good.
David Gorder, I'd like to agree with your comments. My understanding is that it's been in this configuration for many years, maybe from the beginning of the development. Does anybody know how many years that is? 20, okay. So there's a strong precedent. And I agree that it has a purpose in terms of a walking path. And I think it's a project or a situation that needs to be managed, and that's all. I live next to McKee Farms Park. I see 100 dogs go by every day. I'm not exaggerating. And there is really good compliance. But is there an exception where there's a problem? Perhaps, but it's not one that regularly comes up. So I'm in favor of keeping the trail through there. And I would comment that there was something in the correspondence that talked about a master plan. A master plan is a dynamic document. The University of Wisconsin in Madison will redo their master plan every 5 years, and they'll make changes because things change. So the fact that it was or wasn't there in the beginning, I think if it has been used for 20 years, I agree with the idea that if we're going to make some change at this committee level, there has to be a lot more input, a lot more discussion. Thank you.
Okay, thanks, Dave. Any other questions or comments?
Hi, Mark. I have one comment. I agree with the previous comments about keeping it mowed just so that it can be used, but I definitely appreciate the feedback from residents about leash dogs. I know I've experienced, and I've been working with Scott, and he was fantastic, just that it seems like I'm noticing a lot more dogs that are unleashed, and that I do think it's a safety concern, and I like the idea of additional signage. And I know in Quarry Hill and Swan Creek, additional signs were posted, and I think it really did make a difference, where I know some people still don't see the signage or don't abide by it, but I do think that the additional postings helped, and I don't see as many dogs off leash.
Do you find that, excuse me, do you find that the people in that area that use it are from your neighborhood or from somewhere else?
I'm not sure. My assumption is that I see the same people kind of out and about, so I've had the assumption that it's the people in my neighborhood, but I don't know.
Okay. The reason I ask is I live near a park. I don't live next to a park. I live near a park. And I see people come drive their cars in there and unleash their dogs, which I'm not, as a dog owner, I'm not concerned about dangerous dogs so much as dogs that can be a pest, and they jump all over people, how they're not vicious, but they're just being a pest. And that's not fair to people who want to just walk and enjoy the serenity of the prairie. So I agree with you. Any other comments? Yes, Patrick.
Yes, can I speak?
Yeah, go ahead.
Sorry, thank you, Sarah, for the link. I am Julia Ratafrata. I'm one of the elders for the district, and I had the opportunity to walk the path last week. and I access the path through a path that is between two houses on the east part of the path at the end of area number 3. And the path go parallel to the cannonball path, so it's pretty far away from the houses. So, and it's connected to the other one. It's a beautiful area. So I will, as an alder, I will recommend you that keep it open. I agree with the other person that speak that we need to keep the dogs leashed, maybe put more signage, but I think that if you didn't have the opportunity to be in that part of the city, that area is very beautiful, and there is a connection. You can access from the east and west part of the area. So that's all. Thank you.
Yes, Patrick.
Our proposal that Scott is recommending, though, is the dogs are not going to be allowed in Area 3, correct? No? Closed to dogs?
It'll be signed dogs on a leash, just like the whole park, like the whole park system is.
Oh, okay, your letter of June 19th said you were recommending being posted closed to dogs, so that's revised?
Well, that was the first letter to kind of get correspondence, and then I got correspondence, and then the second letter was, okay, after listening to the correspondence, this is my compromise, if you would, and then we got responses again, and now it's before the Park Commission.
Which dated letter says closed, or what?
The original one, May 26th.
So you're going back to the original proposal of closed to, I don't know where you're at here.
If you look at the first letter, May 26th,
Yeah.
it says, to that end, the Parks Department is seeking your feedback on their consideration of permanently closing this mowed walking path. So I proposed to close it. We got responses back, and then I sent a letter on June 19th after considering these comments. The Parks Department is seeking your feedback on the proposal to ask that you provide your in consideration of all these comments, the Parks Department is proposing that the said path resume being mowed along with being posted closed to dogs.
Right. Is that what you're proposing? Or
No,
is that changed
no.
again? That's what I'm going by, right there. Because as far as I know, your only other letter is July 7th.
Yeah,
there.
you're right.
It says, please come to the meeting. I like the proposal of mow the path, not the entire area. I guess currently the whole area is mowed. Is that correct?
No, that's incorrect.
Oh,
Just
okay.
just the path.
Oh, okay, so the change then is to continue to mow the path as is, but close it to dogs because of the dogs essentially being the root of the problem here.
Well, see, and right.
Okay. I mean, I like that idea.
Well, but then, I guess my next proposal is, oh man, I see what you're saying now, though.
Well, I feel that's what's on the table. Mow the path, put a sign up closed to dogs, and my only other comment on this is if it reverts, let's say, to either not mow the path or not put up a sign closed to dogs, it's a kind of a free-for-all of anybody can still walk through there. It's a public area, and then there's no sign that tells them anything about what they can or cannot do, which doesn't seem to address the problem.
And I'm wondering now.
Microphone.
I'm wondering now if I put the wrong June 19th letter in the packet. Because I recall that it would be, yeah.
Yeah, I had a little trouble hearing you. What was your proposal?
Me?
Yeah, Patrick.
I'm going on the June 19th letter, and in the middle of it, it says, said path resume being mowed along with being posted closed to dogs. That's what I saw. I like that. That's what I'm in favor of. I thought that was the proposal we were discussing. I guess it's a little bit in question, but I like this version.
Scott, are dogs allowed currently in the existing prairie?
They are. They just, with all the, they need to be on their leash.
So if we have portions of this path system, assuming all of it is mowed, we would have portions of it that are mowed where dogs are allowed, but portions where it is mowed but dogs are not allowed, which could be more difficult to enforce.
I would say. And I would think that the, I don't know what to think now.
What letter, was it dated?
Which,
Was the letter dated?
the closed to dogs one?
The one you were referring to?
That's June 19th.
Suggest something, please?
Mark?
I got it right here.
May I suggest
Yeah,
something?
go ahead. Sorry.
That's okay. We have a little bit of a confusion, but I would say I'm in favor of allowing leash dogs on the path. And so we don't have a couple of different opinions expressed. Is there any reason why we have to make this decision tonight? Can it go another period of time?
No, we're gonna have to revisit this letter anyway.
Well, right. And we do meet, that first Thursday in August, so I guess I want to double check the letter that I did send out to residents, but from my perspective, the idea of maintaining the same activities that exist in the prairie, the Harlan Hills Prairie Park into this area would make sense, and then some additional signage. And I think actually the Park Commission, could make that recommendation and decision tonight, or, could, although, like I did say, if the Park Commission decides that they're going to close this path, then that's going to have to go to the Common Council, because it is a change in the existing use of that area.
Patrick?
I am not in favor of closing it because it is a public area. Just to mention something that Sue mentioned there, it's required that all dogs are supposed to be on leashes anyway, so that's a kind of a given if somebody has their dog off leash. As far as I know, the only place that it is legal to have a dog off leash is in the dog park or in your own private property, or with permission of someone else's property that you're on. So it's already a standing requirement that dogs have to be on leash in this area. I kind of have a question here. Do we know if someone, okay, first question, is it legal to have dogs on the Cannonball Path? Anybody know? Any problem with dogs on the Cannonball Path?
Still have to be leashed.
Yeah, sure. But I'm thinking,
Yeah, I'm pretty sure they are allowed. I've seen dogs there.
okay. Then is there another access from this whole blue prairie, area 1 green, brown area 2, green area 3? Is there any other access to get on or off of the Cannonball Path except for this very right end area of the green area 3? Or are we essentially giving them a block in the middle that the dogs are not supposed to go through, and then they just can't get there from there? Because that's the problem yet.
It wasn't indicated in any of their letters that I saw.
We might be able to get an answer from the audience.
Can I just speak, because I walk the area,
wanna-
so I know it pretty well. You can access from the Cannonball Pass. There are some informal paths that they are connected to the mow area.
If you'd like to come up to the desk, we can hear, everybody can hear you.
Julia, do you have access to see the maps that we're looking at?
Yes, I have it in my computer.
Okay, so what area are you talking about that does have access to the Cannonball Path?
The area number 3.
Only Area 3?
This is what I see because now the vegetation is too high, but there are informal paths that people have created to connect them.
In other places, or I'm not sure what you're saying?
I have access from that area, from number 3, most at the end of number 3. They are like, you can see there that there is like a clear area there. You can have access.
At the right end of Area 3?
Yeah.
Anywhere else?
I don't know, because this area is pretty dense now, but I access from this part, from that area, and also I access through the houses too.
Okay.
There is a path.
There is actually access to the Cannonball Trail way to the left of the existing prairie. And then, if I recall, there probably is an access to the Cannonball in the area where all of the areas meet, the purple, the brown, and the green.
Yeah, maybe.
David from the neighborhood might be able to share.
I've lived there 20 years.
In the microphone, please.
Original lots, and I can kind of show, there's an access at the end of Harlan Circle. There's a house, and then there's a conservation trail or something that goes down. That's one access. Behind the so that would be the far right house on Harlan Circle, the Teedites.
Okay.
There's a small path from the Cannonball Trail leading to the blue area. I am the far left house on Harlan Circle. There is a swale between the bushes and us that's public access to it.
Mm-hmm.
And somewhere between the two Cannonball paths, there's a trail that leads, there's a path that leads to this trail, and then on the far brown area, there's a access to it. And,
Do you have a point to make, Patrick, on those access barriers?
Yeah, from what I understood from what he said, I don't know if Fact picked it up too well, but there are other access points between green, brown, well, whatever that sort of is, no. Management Area 3, 2, and existing prairie, there are other access points to the Cannonball Trail.
Right.
So if we make Management Area 3 closed to dogs, and someone has a dog and they want to get from the Cannonball Trail to existing prairie or Management Area 1 or 2, they can do it yet. They're not blocked. That's the way I understand
I
it.
think there would be a lot of confusion. First of all, you're starting to put a rule for no dogs in an area where you have existing rules that'll take care of it, in my opinion. In the 20 years that I've lived there, I've seen one dog off leash that's come to my yard, and that was probably a 8-week-old puppy that just was a puppy. People use it as a bypass for the highway of the Cannonball Trail. They're walking their dogs, their children, they don't want to, be on the highway. They want to be, and I've worked a lot planting stuff, and currently right now the city of Fitchburg is hiring somebody to manage to restore the prairie back there. Do you have any other questions about the trail?
From your perspective as one of the residents there, what do you think is best for the situation?
I think what Scott did was putting up additional signage, and we can look at maybe between Tom and I's house to put up a signage about the leashes. I think as a neighbor there, I'll write, to protect my neighbor who does not like to keep dogs off the leash. if I saw somebody, I would say, do you know the regulations? And watch out, and just kind of, you know, neighborhood will take care of it.
You had a comment down here?
I was just gonna ask the same question.
Okay.
And so I'm hearing you say that you're
In favor of just putting up signage as
Putting
a
up
first,
signage.
first step and leave
Keep it
everything?
mowed.
Yeah, okay.
There's a lot of families, little kids, dogs, people on leashes that use it. I think it's, enhances the Fitchburg Park system.
thank you.
Thank you.
Well, in the interest of moving things along, I think what's being proposed is a reasonable approach to it in a minimalist way that hopefully reminds people that their dogs belong on a leash. I think if you eliminate some of the entrances, people will make their own if they're in. I'd rather us cut those than see it created by other people. I'm not sure if that's what was implied there, but that's how I feel anyway. And just, again, you know, I don't want to repeat too much, but I guess I'm looking for a motion on what Scott was proposing, and I'm getting some feeling that there's some support from this body to do that. So if there is that, I would be open to it.
Mark, based on the resident feedback and Scott's information, I would make a motion to keep mowing, add signage to encourage leash dogs, but otherwise still encourage people to use the area, but safely with leash dogs.
Okay, is there a second to that motion?
Yeah, I second the motion.
In a second. All those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
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 All those opposed? Hearing none, motion carried. Next on our agenda, Seminole Glen Kettle. On the, okay, thank you for coming, by the way. And anyone else that was on that too, I really appreciate it coming. Excuse me, Scott, do you want to open that up?
Yes, this is an area in Seminole Glen Park. And actually, I think there may be, whether it's a stormwater facility or an actual park, I think there might be some discussion that, it certainly acts as a piece of the stormwater system. We do have a volunteer who's doing a lot of work in the area. And actually, when the Stoner Prairie development came in, there was water that was going into the kettle, but I think that's been mitigated. And I know Bill Belkey, he could certainly comment to this. And included in your packet was a comprehensive report about this area. And I guess at the end of the day, the idea is that the Park and Forestry Department will continue to work with the volunteers to do a woods restoration there. I know we have some dead trees in there that we're working to, logistically is going to be pretty tough to get them out, but we are looking to figure out a strategy to get those removed. And I know Sue Easterday, she has an interest in this and did ask me to put it on the agenda, so I don't know if you have any thoughts, Susan, and then certainly Bill could comment on the technical aspect of the kettle.
Hi, yes, this park is not too far from the Wildwood neighborhood where I live. And the problems with water retention going into that kettle became most obvious to our neighborhood when 2 years ago we had all that record rainfall and the ground was terribly saturated. And I know we weren't the only ones upset that there were so many mosquitoes. They were everywhere. But in our neighborhood, you literally couldn't inhale outside of your house, to go out from your house to the car, without inhaling some mosquitoes. And it was really the worst I'd ever seen, and I've been here since 2004. And I only learned last year about the water accumulation that for two reasons was ending up in the kettle portions of Seminole Glen Park. And those kettles developed over 10,000 years, and never were they created or designed later, even with the development of the homes there, to handle water that was being shunted in for two reasons that were recent changes. And I mean, others can get into the details of the recent changes, but and one has been mitigated a bit, which was the North Stoner Prairie storm sewer was now new and in part at overflow times dumping water into that kettle. So that was a brand new problem that created some unintended consequences. And the other problem is that the paved path going from Schumann Drive into the park was raised because it would be underwater, like raised up, which created a dam effect so that all of the water overflowing that used to be managed by the open space in the park mowed areas was now not allowed, it was being prevented from going where it had been designed by the developers to go in and percolate in. None of it could get there, and it was swirling around and also going into the kettle. There's actually two kettles, and the volume of water destroyed the natural barrier between them both. So when you get to this, especially the second kettle, there are oak trees in there that are huge. Just knowing that we had to have one cut in our yard that was 140 years old. These are at least that old or older. And now they're dying off because they are not designed to live in standing water. So getting back to 2017, or 2018 rather, with all the mosquitoes, there was, for a long enough period of time to generate mosquitoes, I think a 15-foot depth of standing water which was a safety hazard on top of that. So several neighbors there have done a marvelous job of figuring it out and dealing with it, but we have the problem now of a beautiful area that's, unless we do something, I think those trees are gonna just, more and more of them will die, and it's a hazard, and it just needs to be dealt with. And it'll involve, I think, a lot of different entities, not to mention just our own public works department. So that's my understanding. And I really think it's an important thing for us to deal with, and it's going to take some work and some time.
Okay. Do you have anything to share with us?
Yes. My name is David Hates, and I'm a longtime resident of Seminole Forest, 2005. Over the last 3 years, I've spent a couple hundred hours investigating the causing of the flooding issues. Includes measuring rainfall, pond levels, storm sewer flow rates, pond overflow conditions, and erosion rates at all major storms since 2017. I've met with past and present city engineering staff to determine the historical operation of the watershed and the city modifications that the city has made to it, which include North Stoner Prairie and raising the path through the park. I've coordinated volunteer ecological restoration work that's been occurring since 2017. It actually started in 2010. We accelerated it in 2017. And we have 4.5 acres cleared and replanted. And I've also authored a draft proposal to instrument critical aspects of the watershed to provide for the ability to model alternative solutions to the park problems. I've had meetings with both Claudia and Mike about this. Turns out that there was a city-generated report from Mead and Hunt in 2000 about the problems with the pond and that they needed modification back in 2000. Nothing's happened since 2000. And frankly, In my humble opinion, the scope of the issues are kind of on a par with combination of McGaw Park natural area restoration, because the wooded areas are approximately equal roughly to those at McGaw, plus we have stormwater issues that are a lot like Hillside Heights, except more complicated. And in addition, I'm one of 3 founding board members of a nonprofit, Friends of Seminole Glen Park, and it was founded with the hope of expanding the interest for saving the park beyond just Seminole Forest, because it is adjacent right to North Stoner Prairie and to Lacey Heights. And from my experience in talking to people as they go by, it's about split roughly equally between 3 areas of people that actually use the park. And what we'd like to do is we'd like to leverage the community resources to develop a joint master plan for the park, which will guide future projects to protect and maintain one of our city's natural gems. And it's complicated both from a technical standpoint and a political standpoint and historical standpoint. And for tonight's meeting, my personal hope would simply be to get a basic understanding of the issues out there so that we can discuss this and then have a discussion about how we might go forward on establishing a partnership with a nonprofit and the city to leverage those resources.
Can I ask you a question? Are there any homes that are or have been endangered by?
So there's in 2000. So I actually sent out a presentation. It was very late, but it might be in Scott's mailbox. You could bring it up. But in 2018 and 2017, came within 2 inches of flooding one of the houses on Schuman's Drive. And it was about 14, 15 feet water in the kettle. When the water is in that much, that kettle is holding more water than all the ponds at McKee Farms.
Yeah. Are you through with your comments, or did you have some other ones? Sure.
Those are my comments. I'm happy to provide any additional information about this.
Okay.
And as I said, we've talked to, so in response to all of this in meetings with Mike and Claudia and the alders, there was $10,000 of capital improvement money put in this year's budget to take some preliminary action on this problem. And the question, of course, is what action is sufficient? And the problem is that without knowing the actual operation of the watershed, how can you make a decision as to what actions to take to modify and improve the watershed? And the other point, and Scott alluded to it earlier, is that the city has taken the position for 35 years. It either is a stormwater management facility when they want to dump stormwater, like from North Stoner Prairie in it, or it's not when they don't want to put money into it to maintain the ponds. There's been close to $0 for 35 years, despite the fact of 2 reports, Mead and Hunt in 2002, and then an implementation, in 2000, and an implementation plan follow-up in 2002. The only thing that came out of that was raising the park path, which has destroyed the infiltration capability of the ponds, which was against the recommendation of Mead and Hunt. For 20 years since those reports have been issued, 0 things have been done. It is the very first inventory of city-owned stormwater management facilities in 1997 did not list either the ponds or the kettle, and I believe that was a historical artifact of the fact that it doesn't discharge into waters of the state. It's a closed watershed. Ponds overflow, goes into the kettle. In all the filings with the county for the NPDES permits, until the latest one, including Claudia just updated her list of stormwater management facilities for the city, it's not on any of this. Yet it clearly is a stormwater management facility. So we've got invasive species all over. We've got horrific erosion that's filled the ponds. The 2000 report from Mead and Hunt, they took core measurements. At that time, there was 2 feet of sediment in the ponds. Now it's much worse. Yet There's no evaluation from the Department of Public Works. It's never in the maintenance. It is a black hole of neglect. And then, of course, we had the abuse from dumping North stormwater into it, which, as Scott alluded to, killed immense trees, which now are going to have to be taken down at some level to make it safe, because it's a place where lots of kids play, ride their bikes, do things like that. So the emphasis on creating a nonprofit, we had over 100 responses that people would either be willing to provide time or dollars. But as a community and as a neighborhood, we feel that the aggregated history of the city has demonstrated that nothing will get done unless there's an outside forcing function. We've demonstrated as a neighborhood our goodwill. 4.5 acres, whatever it cost at McGaw to do the Johnson Woods, that's what we've done, the equivalent. Our good faith is there. The city has shown none. And so that's why we're trying to leverage the neighborhood resources to kickstart this and move forward.
All right. Excuse me, I appreciate your comments. And I just, before you would leave, I just want you to fill out a request to speak in case we need to contact you again, or for some of the reasons, just more for the record as well, and give it to Scott on the end. There's some questions apparently for you. Oh, go ahead.
Yeah, I have a question. Did I hear you say that the documentation that you put together and the study that you put together, you sent to Scott Endel just real recently?
No, I sent him a presentation which basically was just pictorial representation of what I just described for this evening.
Well, just whatever it is that you've developed.
It was sent to you guys too.
Yeah, okay. If it was anything new.
No, it was nothing.
Right, I just want to make sure we get it.
No, you covered it in that regard. If people aren't familiar, take the time to stop in. It's right off Schumann. It's 3 minutes away. And just take a look. It's an ecological gem. It's something that you would go to Kelmoraine to see.
Well, I'm probably going to appear to sidestep the issue, but we're the Park Commission. We're going to look at it from that perspective. But it's a bigger issue that we don't have the city engineer or here to ask questions either. So we're kind of at a disadvantage, so to speak.
So this is my problem. My problem is that the city engineer said it's a park, so he can't proceed unless he gets permission from the Parks Department. So what I'm hoping would be perhaps that a couple of members from the commission might be willing to spend a bit of extra time helping me to put together whatever documentation is necessary and a way to navigate the bureaucracy. Sure. Because it's checkmated both ways.
I mean, I know a lot of the history because I was around and on the city council back in the late 80s and 90s anyway. It's one of those things that back then we didn't have the ordinances in place for stormwater management that we do today. Increased development, things we just didn't anticipate. There's been some measures taken, for instance, to raise the level of the bike path or pedestrian paths through the park. I don't know how successful those things have been, but it really doesn't address the core issue, which is the volume of water and the amount of rainfall that we've had in the last 20 years that we didn't have prior to that. I don't know, Scott, why don't you, if you got anything there, you can.
Can I respond to that, please? Can I respond to your comment?
Pardon me?
Can I respond to your comment?
If you want to stay here for some questions, that's fine. I'm not sure what you.
I'm happy to spend as much. I'm here to provide information, in whatever form, so that we can begin to move forward. But this is one of the issues that we run into.
Since you're the only one here, I would invite you to just to stay at the desk, and if questions that come up, we can ask.
I want to hit that point though before we.
Well, if I might offer, Mark, certainly the Parks Department and the Forestry Division, we're all in for partnerships and those kinds of things. So if the Park Commission directs us as staff to work with Dave to take advantage of a nonprofit or people that are interested in volunteering, and we can navigate through the, Public Works or whatever it needs to be done. So I guess if the Park Commission is hearing what Dave is hearing or saying, and you're interested in me as a staff person to work in partnership to navigate with Dave to try and get some resources and partnership and all of those kinds of things, I can certainly do that for you.
I personally think we should, just to know from a park perspective what's going to happen to it. We don't want a detention basin that once was a park either, so.
Well, and Bill, Bill, as the city engineer, director of public works, he and Claudia provided the information that's in your packet. They can certainly provide that technical experience on what's happening, and I think that in partnership with the nonprofit that Dave is suggesting could be a tool to implement some of the things that we're thinking about.
Yeah, I quite frankly don't know the extent of the problems, other than that it seems like everybody's having those kind of issues now, but I mean, it goes beyond really the Park Commission. I think it's really something the City Council should look at carefully, at least if for any other reason, to better educate themselves as to what options they have, if any. I don't know. So I certainly would know at some point what the engineer would say about this problem, and whether it would take a great deal of effort and resources to correct it, or what are the options? I'm not really sure.
Well, and again, that's something that I can network with Public Works and Engineering. I kind of got an idea of everybody what they want to do, and kind of know the players. So I think I can manage that for you and kind of navigate through the whole thing.
Yeah. Go ahead.
If it's appropriate for this evening, I think we should proceed and view this as something that's a must-do for the parks to get it rolling. I'm not saying the council should not be involved, but it is more of something internal that Scott is offering, that he, at least at this point, and he knows how complicated it is, that he can start navigating the situation. So if we are to make a motion, I'd be in favor of doing something like that just to get going.
Okay. Is there a second to the motion?
I second the motion.
Let's get a second, and then we'll open up for discussion. Is there a second to the motion?
I second the motion.
Oh, okay. Thanks, Dave. No. Discussion on the motion. Go ahead.
I have two questions, one for David especially. What district are you in here, and is your alder, or either of your alders involved in this?
So Tom Clowder has known about and been involved.
You're in District 4?
And the new alder I have not yet communicated with. I was basically out of commission in Seattle for 6 months before June. So I'm just picking things back up again. Yeah.
Could you clarify, are you in District 4?
Clowder is my...
Okay. That'd be District 4. I'm a little surprised. Okay.
And Janelle was previously the other.
Right.
So, sorry, I don't know the numbering.
I can't think of his name. Sarah, who's the other alder in District 4?
Randy Udell.
Yeah, right. Okay. Second question here. This may be too simplistic, but as I read this over, the whole analysis by Claudia Guy from 2018 and such, is one possible recommendation that we might want to make here is close this problematic valve and keep it closed, or is that too simple?
Yeah, so Claudia wrote that before she ever talked to anyone, and in fact, so slight digression. If you were putting in an interchange with a valve, you would think that the city at the time would then develop criteria for deciding how it's going to open or close and notify residents of that.
We're not.
I'm just saying,
Yeah.
I'm answering his question.
Yeah.
So the default was open until 2017, massive flood. By my calculations, about 2/3 from the pond, about 1/3 from North Stona Prairie. At that time, I talked to Mike, and he ordered it closed, and he said his policy is that it will stay closed. Now, Bill is a different person. I like to get this in writing, that it will stay closed unless the city engineer orders it, but I would like a specific policy developed in writing as to, obviously, the city engineer should have the right to close it, but it should be for a defined period, and afterward should write a short memo as to why it was. So that's been closed, that's not a problem, but 2/3 of the water previously had been coming from the ponds, largely not because of increased rainfall, largely because the path was put in. It's a closed watershed. The way it was developed is the water overspreads the entire park. The ponds themselves have very fine particulate, very little infiltration. The infiltration is gained when the water exceeds the boundaries of the ponds and then goes straight down into the sandy loam. When the bike path was put in against the recommendation of Mead and Hunt, it was raised, it cut off the access to that infiltration area and funneled it as a stream right to the kettle. And we've seen about 5 feet of erosion between the ponds and the entrance to the kettle. It's like Niagara Falls. It keeps eating its way back. And now the ponds hardly hold any water.
There's a motion. I think
We're in discussion.
Any further comments? Here we have a motion and a second on the floor. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Could you repeat the motion?
I'm sorry?
Sue, I guess, could you repeat the motion?
Yeah, the motion is to, that the Parks Commission authorizes our director to interact with the other city departments, engineering especially, to manage our parks property appropriately and prevent further damage to this park.
Exactly. And I think, depending on where this thing goes, it might even go to the committee of the whole as a topic for discussion. I mean, trying to solve this is not a little problem. There's no simple answers for it either.
Well, and I think the item's been brought up to the Park Commission. Park Commission is aware of what's going on, and then I can work on it and certainly report back to the Park Commission, and we can go from there.
Well, the park is kind of the epicenter of where the flooding begins, but the problem goes far, as you know, no farther than just the parks. So is there any further clarification needed on the motion? Okay, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed signify by nay. Okay, motion carried. Thank you. I screwed that one up. All right, Fahey Fields. Update. What do you got for us?
Corey Horton is here for.
Thank you for coming, by the way.
For any questions that we may have. This project is out for bid. There was a change in that the timing of the project. Originally, the thought was that we were going to try and get the pickleball courts developed and built this year. But with the need of the water project to come in and with the timing of the water project, there wasn't enough days in the year, if you would. So we did amend the timing of this. So the resolution that we're going to talk about in item A is really part of this project. So the one thing is that the deadline is going to be the 27th of July. Corey has provided, R.A. Smith has provided a engineering estimate for the project. which I think is important because we do want to talk about funding with that engineering estimate of $519,325. That project will come back to the Park Commission in August after we get the bids and all of those kinds of things. Now, Tracy's water project, which is going to be which is referred to the Park Commission Resolution 12220, has a couple water projects included in it. One of them is to get city water to McGaw Park, the existing shelter. And then the other piece of it is to come through Fahey Fields and loop to the west, so that we'll have a drinking fountain available, but then there's also going to be availability of water in case we want to do a shelter or a bathroom on the west end of this area. What we would do at that point then potentially is connect with sewer from the Fahey Fields development to the east. So that's all I really had for the Fahey Fields update for you. And then actually, if I could roll into the resolution 12220, which is actually what has been referred to the Park Commission, which is Tracy's water project. And I did give to you tonight an updated resolution for that, and I did highlight that James Peterson Sons, they ended up getting the project for $2,048,000, which there's a couple different water projects included in this whole bid. But at the bottom, Tracy was able to itemize out of their bid how much it's going to cost to get water, city water to the McGaw shelter, which is $128,011. And then the extension east-west through Fahey is $69,446 for a total of $197,457. So that would be the amount, and then if you add that amount, that $197,457 to the engineering estimate of McGaw Park of $519, you get about 200 plus 519, about 719. But what I also included in your information, if you look on page 20 of your packet, I may have shared, I don't know if I shared this with you. If you look to the right, it says current park funds available. To the right in the blue, these are the fees in lieu of parkland dedication that we have in our account currently, $862,000 and some change. And then the park improvement, the area community parks, we've got some dollars. So we have a total of $890,000 and some change available to do these kinds of amenities in a community park. But we do have current allocations from that fund, $320 for the courts for pickleball, and $75 for the water. So in theory, we've got $395 already allocated in the CIP. But then if you look at in the middle of the page, those are park improvement fee accounts. And if you look at the bottom, you see Fahey Fields has $265, $195 for park improvement account dollars. So you add all of those up, and those are the dollars that we have available, along with the unencumbered funds of $257. So at the end of the day, what I'm showing you is that there's money available to get the project done.
I have a question.
Mm-hmm.
Go ahead, Dave.
In the past, there's been funds that have been allocated for the replacement of the roof at the Wildwood shelter.
Yep.
Where is that included here?
That, I believe that's in a different CIP account. Oh, gosh.
Well, the point is, money has been set aside for
Yes,
that.
and that project is, that project's ongoing. We're trying to find a contractor to get it done.
Right.
So that, right.
Well, I would say we've gone years without doing something, and it should be a priority. It reflects poorly on the Park Commission, on the city of Fitchburg, to neglect a shelter like that.
We've got it on the schedule for this year.
Okay.
So, to make a long story short, Mark, I don't know if we wanted to, go to resolution, R12220 and act on that. And I guess what I wanted to do is I wanted to also include, because Fahey Fields will be coming, we'll get the bid and the price and all of that, so that'll be coming in August. But I wanted to give you a kind of an idea of what that could potentially cost with the engineering estimate from R.A. Smith.
I'm not sure what you're proposing, Dave, to keep the whereas clause in?
I wasn't proposing anything. I just didn't see it here.
Yeah.
And I wanted to make sure it didn't get lost. And
Sure.
Scott has assured us that it is, funding is available and nothing that we would, with this request, would jeopardize that.
No.
No. Okay.
That's in a separate, Dave, that's in a separate CIP account for, we do playground, playground retrofits and all of those kinds of things. So that project's identified in a separate CIP.
No, that's fine. I just wanted to make sure it was clear.
Any other comments for Scott or anyone?
Did that make sense? I kind of rambled on a little bit, but.
Actually, I do have a question. The pickleball courts, I only heard of that within the last 2 or 3 months. That was approved by the Common Council?
That's correct.
Okay, and did the Parks Commission make a proposal that had that summary?
No, that was proposed by the mayor, and then it was approved by the Common Council.
And where does the Park Commission fit in here? After the fact?
We're trying to implement the mayor's initiative. That's what staff is trying to do.
But is that the right process? Is that how it go? What's the purpose of the Park Commission?
That's the process that this project has gone through.
What is the purpose of the Park Commission? Why do we have commissioners?
Well, the Park Commission is certainly here to advise and provide feedback, but with the understanding too that the Common Council is the policymakers and the mayor is the policymaker, so we are to some degree are advisory to the council when they ask us to do some things, and if the mayor has an initiative and the Common Council approves that initiative, it's really our role, my role as staff, to implement those initiatives.
Thank you for clarifying that.
What you're talking about?
Yes.
I was wondering kind of the same thing in that because one of the whereas clause was deleted, there appears to be anything, unrelated to parks. And I think isn't that kind of what you were getting to?
Yes.
Yeah, that
In the
maybe there needs to be some kind of relationship to this project to something that we've been proposing in the parks.
Well,
That's why I was wondering why that was proposed to be removed.
Well, and actually, within the resolution I just highlighted, whereas it is necessary to provide public water to the McGaw Park shelter due to nitrate contamination of the existing well and this facility and for future facilities at this park. So I think that's where it's identified in the resolution for what we're approving tonight, if you would.
So that's being highlighted, not deleted.
No, right, I just highlighted
Oh,
it.
okay,
To draw your attention that,
I thought you were
no, I just,
reading it.
no,
Got
no,
it, got
no.
it. Okay, is that,
I just wanted to draw your attention that this is, this is a resolution that is for the water extension, but the Parks Department has a piece of it. That's why it was referred to you.
Yeah.
And that's why I kind of had Tracy weed out what part of the $2 million project was associated with the parks. And then I wanted to try and give you the background on the funding that's available to do these projects. So tonight, what you're doing is you're approving this resolution that is worth $2 million, but you, as the Park Commission, have about $197,000 included of that $2 million with the project at Fahey Fields and McGaw Park.
right, okay. Is that clarified?
Yes.
Yeah. Patrick?
I was highly encouraged at first glance that that third whereas was being deleted, because I really hate this proposal of connecting water to the McLaw shelter.
Well, and as you know, Patrick, this was approved in 2018 and is approved by the Common Council and approved by Finance, so it really is a done deal. I know you feel strongly against it, but it is a done deal.
Well, I still object to that, and I don't believe that, because it is on our agenda here. I got a question. Are we on B, Fahey Fields Park update, or did we jump to A, Resolution 122?
Well, I guess they're both kind of intertwined, so we
Right.
can, I
I
guess
don't
I
know
want
which
to
one we're-
provide, yeah, we can do whatever one you want to talk about.
Yeah, I don't want to debate something we've already debated, but if you have some comments for the record, that's fine with me.
Which one are we on? Fahey Fields is about the pickleball court and parking lot, and the
Well, I think
12220.
I think we're on Fahey Fields Park update. That was the order, but I did
Yeah.
want to kind
There's
of
a relationship, I guess.
tie
know
the
they're
two together.
tied
yeah.
together. Okay, so really, at this point, we are looking at the pickleball court layout.
Yep, and I provided an update that we're going to do a time adjustment to that with the development being an alternative as far as timing. Available funds, I've listed $918,000, and that it will come to the Park Commission in September for your recommendation. It'll be referred to the Park Commission then.
Okay, so are you saying the pickleball court is being delayed on construction, and we're going to see it again in September, you said?
What I'll do is we'll get prices for the pickleball construction, which is due July 27th. I'll put together a resolution and referral so that it'll go to the Common Council, and then it will be referred back to the Park Commission in September for their action.
Okay, so since the pickleball court, as many of us on this commission have discussed over the past several months, has never had any public input and has not really been on our agenda as far as much opportunity for comment, and we do have first today here Corey Horton, the project manager of the pickleball court project from R.A. Smith. Is this possibly, for the first time, our opportunity for some public input and some comment on this thing?
Well, it's been on the agenda for the last couple months, so you certainly had opportunities.
I think you could poll the commission here and find several of us that would say we've never had a chance to comment on this, and we have not had any representative of R.A. Smith here to question.
What are your comments so that we know?
Well, I'm looking at this here, and I do see, by comparison, the parking lot. I have no objection to the pickleball court where they are approximately, and building 8 of them and all of that. I see a third version, at least, of the parking lot, which I think is just as bad as the previous 2 versions. We've had a little bit of comment, kind of forced some comment in the past meetings I hear, but not really a good discussion on it. I know Chris at a previous meeting mentioned how awkward this driveway is going into this parking lot. This is the same driveway, never changed. And I see that the layout of the parking places is, as I say, third version. Now it's revised to reduce the number of parking places to 35, I counted. As soon as you head into this entrance driveway towards this parking lot, you're really locked in. You've got to go all the way through this loop, all the way through the parking lot, around the whole loop, and then you can get back out of it, which I think is very awkward and cumbersome. I think that this is squeezing this parking lot into this middle area of this western addition of the park, and I think this layout is poor, and I think a whole lot better design would satisfy the idea of the pickleball court. I mean, in general here, I think the pickleball courts are fine, but really, and I have studied this a lot. I have measured some areas over the many years. I have done some comparisons, measured things very recently, several times over. I think in my design revisions that I would propose that the pickleball court might be shifted a little to the south in order to allow the space for trees that was requested in some of our comments. These things are really jammed together into this middle plateau area of this western addition. I'd like to see the pickleball courts moved some, maybe it's just 20 feet or something like that to the south, take that parking lot out of there entirely, and a small open shelter, which I would envision as being similar to the kids' crossing shelter, could be on that spot with a lot of trees around it. I have measured the area that is to the right of this area, really where the entrance driveway is drawn right now. There is enough room, and I've measured it several times, that the parking lot could be right in that place where that entrance driveway is drawn in, and that would eliminate the need for building a two-directional driveway across that huge ditch to get over to this design parking lot. And what I have worked out for myself and measured, and I believe it will work, I just don't have CAD software to draw it all up. I can see a parking lot that is in the area that is, if you know the park, which I do extremely well, directly to the west of the existing two main parking lots. There's an area there. That area is where this entrance driveway is drawn in to cut across it. So I would put the parking lot there, and as I have measured and worked out, it could have two entrances, both of them being an entrance and an exit on both of those entrances. I compared to the existing parking lots for measurements and size necessary, and I figure that a 46-car to 50-car parking lot can be put into that space, with the aisle going down the middle being a two-directional aisle. The parking spaces could be perpendicular instead of diagonal as shown here, and it would be a whole lot easier to see it and get in and out of it. It would be so much simpler, and it would have more than 35 spaces like this third version here, and I think it would work a whole lot better. And then over in the western addition could be just a footbridge kind of access over there to the pickleball area with a small shelter over there. It'd be so much better, I think. But I've never had the chance to bring this up anywhere. So I have a question for Corey Horton, R.A. Smith project manager. When this was presented to R.A. Smith with this proposal of, I believe, spending $23,000 to get this thing drawn up, possibly were you asked to take this area in the western addition, this middle plateau, as I call it, of this western addition right here, and you were given, I'm wondering, were you given this area and said, fit a pickleball and a parking lot into here and make it work?
So there were many, design iterations, and where you're describing, installing parking to the east of the ditch, kind of
Yes.
Between there, we looked at that. The problem with that was the desire was to have the parking located in close proximity to the pickleball, because not only do you have the pickleball there, you have the fields that are located there as well. So to put the parking all the way over by the existing McGaw parking, essentially, you have a very long distance for people to get to those, and that wasn't the desire of the council. They wanted to have parking in close proximity to the pickleball, to the fields, and ultimately there's space to the west of the parking area for a shelter as well. So that was the desire from the council. And part of the reason too is, ultimately this is an addition to a new park, and there's a lot of residential development further to the west as well. And if that parking wasn't in close proximity to all of those amenities, people would just park on the street and overwhelm the street parking along the street that fronts the park there. So those were kind of the thought processes that went through it. This wasn't here you go, R.A. Smith, just put down what you think. We went through several iterations to lay this out to achieve what the council was after.
The street to the west you're talking about is Notre Dame Drive?
Notre Dame, correct.
Yes, okay. And I have a solution for that too, of increasing the parking along there. Kind of a little bit later discussion.
Okay. I don't want to go through all this design work over again, and I don't think anybody else does.
I do have a question.
You got a question? Go
I do
ahead.
have a question for
Get up on your mic a little more.
Hi. Could you enlighten us about the paths that go around the parking lot and the pickleball? Why are there paths that do that?
Sure. So to the north of the pickleball, there are soccer fields, and then also to the south. So those paths loop to cross the channels that are on that site. There's many channels that were designed as a part of a previous project.
Like water, storm drainage
Yes.
channels? Okay.
Correct.
Got it.
So that's why there's, so many culvert crossings and so many paths, is to enable people to basically get from one side of the site to the other. There's also some trail connections, some fairly major trail connections. The northern trail on the west side connects into Outlot 5 and Fahey Fields, which will be a multi-use path that goes through the Fahey Fields development that ultimately connects into a trail network. And then on the southeast corner, that portion will tie into a new path that was just installed by the Parks Department as well. So this is just to kind of make those connections, and then also to provide access for people to get to the fields and the other amenities that ultimately will be built out in the park.
Okay. All right. Because at first glance, it just looks like we have a parking lot and we have a pickleball court, and so let's put a path around each of them.
Right.
But the ones that are absolutely necessary are where the 3 yellow markers are. Those are the culvert crossings?
So the yellow that showed up, I only see 2 of them on my plan. I don't know if I'm missing one. But those are areas where the water main traverses the site, where it gets insulated, where it crosses the culvert crossings.
Okay.
So there's ultimately 6 culvert crossings because of all of those storm drainage channels that go around the site. So that's why. One thing that doesn't show on these plans is we also, did a lot of thinking about, it's also planned to have eventually, potentially, to add additional amenities, like having play structure, to have a shelter. There's space to add future pickleball courts to the east of the pickleball courts, or that could remain an open field, or potentially even an ice rink in the future. So that's why kind of things are spaced out the way they are, and those aren't getting built now, so they don't show up on these plans, but there's a lot of other things that kind of go into why this was laid out the way it was.
Gives us the options in the future.
Correct.
Yeah. Any other questions, comments?
Does this allow for trees in this area around the pickleball courts and parking lot?
Right, so we did provide, that was something we discussed extensively as well. You typically don't want to have trees right up against the pickleball courts because they will drop their leaves, and it results, one, in a nuisance for people that they can slip on, or just a maintenance issue. So we didn't put trees right up against the pickleball fence. We ultimately created a terrace between the parking lot and the path, which then, it's the path, basically it would go the parking lot, the terrace with the trees, then a path, and then adjacent to the pickleball court, there is space for crushed granite where they can, the Parks Department can also put in some flowers as well. So we wanted to have the ability to have some green space there, but also to minimize maintenance and to make sure that we don't have leaves falling onto the pickleball courts. So we did leave space there to add trees in the terrace, and then we probably will, we also have space to the west of the path on the west side of the pickleball courts to put trees in as well.
I know that was a question in the past, possibly from Sue, I think in a past meeting about more trees in here. And now as far as leaves on trees, it depends what kind of trees, because around the McKee tennis court, there's a lot of arborvitaes there. They don't have leaves. They just provide some shade and some cooling effect and everything. So, I mean, I'd be in favor of a row of arborvitaes to help block the wind for the pickleball going around this thing. But with this parking lot in here, it looks like a whole lot of paved area. It looks like things are squeezed, jammed in here with very little space between pavement and sidewalk and more pavement. And it really doesn't look on this diagram like there's room for trees. There's another thing that I was thinking of here. The whole erosion control and all these huge ditches that were built in here by Speedway Sand and Gravel, according to some consultant's design. This whole area here flows to the east of this area, and then it goes straight north, and then it bypasses the wet retention pond and the dry infiltration pond. It bypasses all of that and goes straight into the crossing ponds of the crossing. And one of the conversations I had with Claudia Guy last year when this was being all graded and everything was that this was supposed to be clean water coming off of this whole western addition, and that's why it bypasses the wet pond and the dry pond. But with all this pavement in here, especially with the parking lot, then there's runoff from the parking lot from oils and such from cars that will go into this ditch to the east, and because that's the way it flows, and then it'll go straight north, and it bypasses the infiltration ponds and goes straight into the ponds of the crossing. That seems like a poor way of designing the whole thing. I mean, it's like the ditches were put in, and then later on, at a completely different thought, somebody said, hey, why don't we put a parking lot here and here, not realizing the runoff is going to put all that parking lot runoff into the watershed.
So there's also been a lot of thought into that. I guess, first of all, the ditch system and the grading that was completed was done by city staff. That was not a consultant that did that. As far as the stormwater management and water quality is concerned, the Fahey Fields development, when they put in the development, this outlot was dedicated as a part of that. And the stormwater management, both the water quantity, quality, and the rate control were all accounted for developing this site. So as much as the water, you're totally right in that it hits that ditch and ultimately goes to the crossing ponds. This was designed to where water quality was essentially over-treated in the Fahey Fields development to account for the development of the outlot for the park. And part of our work, we looked at, is this development of the park consistent with all of the assumptions that were made when Fahey Fields was designed to make sure that it meets all of the stormwater quality requirements and quantity requirements that are required by the city's ordinances. And it is consistent with the design that was put together to account for this. So that's how stormwater management was considered and evaluated. And we know the history there that the crossing has had with flooding issues, so we extensively looked at that as well. And the Fahey Fields development ultimately is diverting a lot of the water around the crossing development to the west rather than to the east. So that is a major component of why this development is able to function without impacting the crossing. It was essentially designed as a part of the Fahey Fields development. Well,
The part that I'm looking at here, and from what I understood from Claudia Guy about how these ditches were built, it sounded like all the runoff of this whole western addition and these 3 plateau areas and these huge ditches, this was supposed to be clean water. That's why it didn't go into the wet retention pond and the so-called dry infiltration pond, because it's clean water. So Was this all, this wall as water management and these ditches and routing of the watershed and everything, was that taken in light of having a parking lot here?
Yes, the development in Fahey Fields, I'm trying to go from memory, I believe it was around 20% impervious is what this site was designed for, and we're under that amount. Even with the future addition of the additional pickleball court imperviousness and buildings on the site as well. So all of that was looked at with the design.
All right. We have some crossover with the pickleball courts and the bids for the extension of the water. If there isn't any further discussion, I'd entertain a motion on the resolution R2220.
I have a comment, since we're now on R2220, 12220.
Okay.
Okay, as I said early on, I really hate this water connection. I guess I'll ask the first question here. I know Bill Balke is still on there too, and Corey Horton was our past Public Works Director. You guys are fully aware that this water main is already looped, right? Because it comes out of the southwest corner of the crossing onto a future extension of Notre Dame Drive, and I saw the pipes being connected, and it's looped right there at the southwest corner of the crossing onto Notre Dame. Why does it have to be looped again 500 feet away through here?
I don't know if Bill wants to talk to that. I can talk a little bit to that, even though that really is out of my scope for this. It's more my DPW hat when I used to work for the city. So ultimately, if we had a long dead-end connection to the park shelter, you have water quality issues with the water main. The water would sit in the water main. You don't have enough water turnover in the pipe to maintain water quality.
Exactly.
So part of the looping is to maintain the water quality in that. I guess the second major reason is to, have that loop through this new addition to the park, which enables us to have water fountains. It enables us to have water and potential restrooms at a future shelter. We don't want to put a bunch of paths in now and then have to put water main in and cut them all up and dig them all up again. So ultimately that is the second reason. I guess the third reason is the city has a water system, model that basically looks at all of the flows in the city system and where it is logical for it to have looping. And part of that is not just how it is today, it's how it ultimately will be built out in the future. So as you build each component, you're thinking 20, 30 years down the road, where are we gonna need loops? So for instance, as Fahey Fields development, 30 years from now, if they expand the urban service area and continue going to the south, those loops are thought of right now, so we don't need to worry about those in the future.
One thing I couldn't pick up from these diagrams is what size of water main pipe is being put in here for this loop part?
I guess I haven't been involved with that project at all. Bill, do you know that?
City standard, I mean, something like whatever it was, 8-inch pipe or
it's
something like?
probably an 8-inch is what I would guess.
Bill, have any comment?
Yeah, it's an 8-inch water main that we're looping through there.
Okay, and then I read somewhere, it's not in this, I don't believe, I don't know where I read it, but it's a 1-inch copper pipe that goes way over to the east to the McGaw shelter?
I believe that's the size that it was. Again,
Okay.
I wasn't involved with that aspect of it.
Okay, so following on your comments there about it's looped so that it can connect onto the McGaw shelter and, to put a drinking fountain in the middle of this, I can readily see another alternative here of don't connect onto the McGaw shelter and don't put the drinking fountain there. And even on some of these plans right here, it shows that over to the west somewhere of the pickleball court is where the new proposed probably $500,000 shelter, the second main shelter of McGaw Park would be built, which puts it really close to Notre Dame Drive, which means the water for that shelter and the sewer connection, as Scott mentioned, can come right off of Notre Dame Drive, and it doesn't need this loop through here. So this seems like a kind of a backwards, we want to put a loop in for no reason except, oh yeah, well, we've connected over to the McGaw shelter and we'll put a drinking fountain in the middle. It seems like a bad justification. I did write a 2-page letter to our Parks Director, Scott Endel, and I also sent it to the mayor, raising all of the issues and a lot of questions and reviewing all of the discussions that's been going on about this water connection to the McGaw shelter. I have not yet to this date received any response to that, just being ignored apparently. I don't see that it's necessary. I have never seen that it's justified. It's just completely unneeded to connect the water to the McGaw shelter as far as all of the facts that have been given so far. The only thing mentioned in this packet right here is the nitrate levels. Well, according to the test, from 2017, the nitrate levels had stabilized. They were increasing in the past, so maybe a view 10 years ago was that the count was increasing. But since 2017, the nitrates in the water from the McGaw well has stabilized. And then the test result for this year, 2020, it decreased. So it actually in the current year is on a decreasing trend if you want to read that into it. So I still do not see the necessity or justification or any good solid reasons except a whim of decision on connecting this water to the McGaw shelter. Now, if somebody wants to analyze it by a professional well company or so, as I suggested in my letter, I'd like to see it. But so far, this is not necessary.
May I?
Patrick, we've gone through this, I think, every time the subject has been brought up. And it's been voted down every time. So I'm not sure it serves this commission to keep hammering away at whether we want to provide water to the park or whether we shouldn't provide water to the park. But I think the opportunity exists with looping the system, and I think it'd be short-sighted not to do it. So I don't know what purpose it serves to continue debating this thing until
this here
hell freezes over.
The new fact that we've just been given here at this meeting is that I know there's $75,000 allocated to connect the water to the McGaw shelter, but apparently it's going to cost about $128,000, so $50,000 more than is allocated.
Perhaps
is that correct?
Perhaps if they looped it in a different manner, not including the park, maybe it would be cheaper, but I think it would be extremely short-sighted. And that's how the system was designed, that's how it was bid out.
Well, what I've requested is a professional expert analysis of this water and not just somebody's whim idea of, well, nitrates and sand and this and that. So let's just spend now $128,000 on it.
But
I don't see the justification.
But unless I'm misjudging this board, I think we should just move on. If I'm wrong, speak up.
I guess I would be comfortable making a motion to approve Resolution R12220 to extend the water and sanitary based on staff's recommendations, that they are clearly stating that it's needed and that it'll improve fire flow protection, water quality, it'll address future developments, that I'd make a motion to approve it.
Okay, is there a second?
I second.
Second?
I second the motion.
Okay, I think we already had one, but that's all right. All right, further discussion on the motion?
I would like to make an amendment. My amendment is to delete the third whereas and cut that part out of this project. I won't get anywhere, but I'm making the motion officially on the record anyway.
Is there a second to that motion? Hearing none and seeing none, the motion is not approved for lack of a second. Voting back on the motion, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Roll call.
Roll call. Scott, would you like to do the roll call?
Sure. Sarah?
Aye.
Chris?
Aye.
Kate?
Aye.
Patrick?
No.
Susan?
Aye.
David?
Aye.
Okay.
Motion carried.
Resolution approved.
Thank you.
Moving on. Communications, Scott. COVID.
Well, could we, one thing here before we go from this, can we get a little bit of a clarification summary about item B, the Fahey Fields Park update. So we, as I understand it here, we're not doing, just clarify, what are we doing about the Fahey Fields? Is that postponed?
The bids are due on the 27th of July. I will draft a referral, no resolution related to that, the bids that we receive, and it'll go to the council. And then it'll be referred back to the Park Commission in August for their consideration, and then go, in theory, to the first.
You said September before. Referred back.
Yeah, it is September, I'm sorry.
September, okay.
It is September, yep, September.
So the Fahey Fields is still, and that means the pickleball in the parking lot idea, right?
Yep.
Okay,
yep.
so that is postponed, coming back in September.
It's currently out to bid.
Okay.
The bid deadline is July 27th. I will draft a resolution that'll go to the Common Council for the August 11th meeting, which will be referred out to the Park Commission for their September 3rd meeting to take action on it.
Okay.
And then the Common Council, in theory, could approve it that first meeting in September, their first meeting.
Okay. Then I have a different question that I'd like to ask Alder Sarah. The Board of Public, well, let's see. Okay, for our 12220, it says in the referral there that it went to the Board of Public Works on July 13th, this past Monday. I watched the whole Board of Public Works meeting. It was only 25 minutes long.
Correct.
This was not on the agenda, so was there some kind of a change there that this didn't go to the Board of Public Works yet? That's our 12220.
Let me look at the agenda for sure. Bill, if you want to speak on it, but I believe we did discuss it.
No, it wasn't on the agenda. Our
Postponed
12220.
until the 20th Board of Public Works meeting.
So it's postponed to the next Board of Public Works meeting, Bill?
Thank you.
Correct. Yes.
Okay, right. That's what I wanted to know.
Okay?
Scott?
Communication, COVID update. The rec department is currently out in the field working on the parks, and it's not looking good for this fall either. But we'll certainly keep everybody posted in regards to fall programming and those kinds of things. We're currently, the park shelter or the park bathrooms are open. We are taking reservations if the group that reserves the shelter is under 25, and we do allow for practices on ball fields. So that's kind of an update on that.
So are Chad and Austin back out working in the field again?
Well, they are continuing to work out in the parks, right?
So
They do come in, because there is correspondence that they do have to respond to. They'll come in for maybe an hour or two into the office, but mainly they're out in the parks.
yeah, that's what I was wondering, because there are reservations being accepted on a limited basis.
Yep.
So they're in the office a little while to handle that.
Yep.
But otherwise they work in the field.
Yep, that's correct.
Okay.
S. Johnson Playground, I did provide some pictures for you. That has been installed, and actually the park staff are doing some final touches on that one, which is a new, and it's really, really pretty cool. They actually built that rock wall, which is shown in the picture, so I wanted to give you an update on that. Patrick asked for an update on...
One comment on the Johnson
Yes,
Playground. It
yes.
looks really nice. I did see that rock wall. I didn't know if that was Public Works or park staff that built the rock wall
Park staff, yeah.
along the bank of that creek.
Yep,
They made good use of the boulders that
Yep,
they dug up.
yep,
And the landscaping they did all around the playground equipment looks really nice.
It's really going to be nice.
That, by the way, for the rest of you, is my neighborhood park there in Johnson Park.
And then also, Patrick was looking for an update on Sunnyside Park, which is our dog park related to a drinking fountain. So that was one of the sheets that I did provide to you, kind of an update of that item, along with an analysis, kind of pro and con thing that Joran did. We're still working with the dog park advocates leadership to determine what they want to do. And as part of that, there is a well at that location, and we did get it tested, and that was another request from Patrick, and the nitrates were 7.55 on that, 5.5 on that well, so that was good. So I wanted to...
Yeah, this lab report that you gave us, is that for Sunnyside?
Pardon me?
This lab report that you gave us tonight, is that for Sunnyside?
Yeah, it says right at the top there,
Oh, yeah.
Sunnyside.
Okay.
And then the other thing that Patrick was looking for was the cost of the woods restoration at S. Johnson, Mole Construction, so I provided that $3,150 for that.
And I'll just comment that I think that machine was well worth the effort. I think they did a good job of chipping up everything and then provided a lot of nice fresh chips to spread around in Johnson Park. So I think the money spent to Mall Construction was well worth it, and certainly legal as opposed to burning brush piles.
And actually it was kind of a combination where, you know, our woods mower is able to do a lot of that clearing, but there were some big logs, and we just don't have the equipment to run it through, but Mole does, and made quick work of it, so.
I think it was worth the money.
Scott, I have a question about S. Johnson. Just chatting with a neighbor there not long ago, a question came up about within the woods where the trees that needed to come down are down, and the smaller things were just ground up as this equipment went through, but there are a number of large box elder stumps that are there and growing back again, and that's really a nuisance tree. You don't want repopulating the woods. And then there's a corner of the park would be southeast area where those two homes back up on the south and actually the east border of the park.
The east end of the park.
The east end of the park. There's a bunch of box elders left in there that were never taken down, and all the way along that lot line, all the way up to the road. And the question was, why leave them and get rid of them so that they're not going to create reoccurring problems within the park?
Well, and I don't know if those box elders are on our property or the neighbor's property.
Well, they have fencing, and it's on the park side of the fencing.
Yeah, that's a good.
Kind of a little no man's land back here, but it's.
No, it is park property. The Parks Department, as you should well know, had the whole thing surveyed by a professional surveyor. The corners are very well marked. I know exactly where they are because I know the posts are there. So it is park property. It's your responsibility.
I'm glad I got a mask on.
Yeah, well, to pick up on something that Sue mentioned there about some of these, well, there's a lot of stumps yet in Johnson Park, and one observation that I made is the Parks Department or Public Works, whoever runs it, seems to have never used a stump grinder in Johnson Park, whereas over in McGaw Park, north of the soccer field, the stump grinder was used in there. So there's a whole lot of stumps sticking up in Johnson Park that have never been ground up. Why not? We own a stump grinder.
Well, that's work that we typically will do in the fall and the winter. So
it's going to be done.
We'll ask them to put it on the list.
Okay. The phases of Johnson Park have been worked on over the past several years. About 4 phases that I know of, and no stump grinder was ever used so far.
And to your point, Susan, as far as the idea, and what Anna will do is she'll hire someone to come in and spot spray all of the invasives when they resprout and all of those kinds of things. That's one of the things that we, people have advised us to make sure once you go in there and remove all the honeysuckle and stuff like that, you're not done. You've got to come back in and spray those sprouts and those kinds of things. So Anna does manage that.
Okay. So then, when you are able to find out about the question the neighbor had, I'm sorry, his name escapes me at this moment.
What about the box elders?
Yeah, they're large, mature, and they lean and fall and cause problems, and they're just considered a trashy tree.
Oh, absolutely.
Thanks.
You're welcome.
Appreciate
it.
Welcome.
You're welcome.
Sue, so was it one of those 2 neighbors on the east end that asked for this?
Yeah, that raised the question.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then that's all the update information I have, Mark. For communication.
Future agenda items?
Well, like I say, we're actually going to we'll have our meeting in a couple weeks. I don't know if we've got anything on that agenda. But then we'll meet again September 3rd, which for sure we'll have the Fahey Fields project.
On the minutes of our June meeting, future agenda items says, ask Alder Dorothy Kraus to stop in and discuss her proposal for a new community park, Dunn's Marsh area. That's still a future agenda item that we want, right?
Okay, okay.
I have a suggestion for the future agenda item, and this is a discussion now I feel we're going in a circle about the Parks Commission not being involved, and I'm not bringing this up right now to litigate anything we talked about tonight, but for future projects, whether it is what Patrick just mentioned, that the Alder has working on ideas for another community park. Another mayor is elected and they have an initiative they want. When it involves parks, I really would like to see us create a policy and run it up the chain so that we're treated just the way Public Works and other city departments are treated, so that we are in the loop and part of the discussion on things like we have discussed tonight. It just is awkward and can become more contentious than it needs to be because of us finding out about it in the back end and, oh, by the way, you need to approve this. So that's not to cast aspersions on any person, past, present, or future. I just really think would be a better policy for the city. So if we can have that on the agenda for us to begin to discuss, I'd appreciate it.
So what would be the title, or what would be the?
Well, I'm not sure. What would be the title?
I agree with your comments, and I guess I would suggest that
You know,
maybe
yeah.
Routing or
it's the Alder's.
policy of how park improvements are created.
I mean, some of these things, like what Corey was saying about the council decided this way back when, I don't know when that was. I didn't hear of it, or I would have been there to, you know, gripe at the council about some of these things, but I'm being told this is a done deal, which I disagree with. So yeah, Parks Commission seems to hear about these things way late.
Well, what I could do is I could bring with what the Park Commission's role is within the city policies, and maybe that might be a good starting point. And certainly at the end of the day, the Park Commission is advisory to the Common Council. The Common Council and the mayor, they decide on all of these things potentially. And I will tell you, Sue, that it's improved immensely in that developers come in now. I know I've been criticized about this Fahey Fields thing, but at the end of the day, we had COVID, we had a whole bunch of issues. We had the mayor who wanted the pickleball courts in there, which pushed it along, and at the end of the day, we did have a process in approving the McGaw Park master plan, which included this center section of being amenities. So this, I do want to push back a little bit in that, I feel that Park Commission, neighborhoods, we've been doing a better job of communicating everything, and so I just, to kind of defend myself, I guess, a little bit, I want to push back.
As I said, I'm not pointing fingers at any individual. I just think a different process, or discussing the process,
and
deciding if there's a way for it to be better is something we should do.
And to the Dorothy Krause thing, that was a CIP amendment that she put in there. I can't control what the CIP amendments and Alder might put into the budget, but we can certainly call her and ask her to come in and talk to it.
I know she wants to, and again, I'm not picking particularly at her and at that project necessarily. I just don't, there isn't any reason, I don't see a reason why we can't be part of the process any more. Public Works is when someone says, I want a street here.
I agree. So, no doubt.
That's more of what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
Okay.
And I'll get the city ordinances and the, sure.
All right. Any other new business? I have one. I apologize for not remembering everybody's names here, but we've had a real changeover, and I haven't been around very much, so, I guess if I point to you or something rather than say your name, it's probably because I forgot it or don't know it yet. But I'm trying, and hopefully that will improve as time goes on.
Not to worry, Mark,
Yeah.
not to worry.
That might be a better way too.
There you go.
'Cause, yeah, this is, this curve is so gradual, you can't really read anybody's name, so. Anyway, item 10, announcements, the next two council, or commission meetings will be August 6th and September 3rd. So we need a motion to adjourn after that. Wait a second.
I will move to adjourn.
Thanks, Susan.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
Now you sense some reluctance there. Okay, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 All those opposed?
It is
We are adjourned.
9:01,
9:01.
9:01 PM.